Welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Ariana Hartman. Today we have Gina L. Osborn, a former FBI agent, Army veteran, and trailblazing thought leader. For 11 years, Osborn served as the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Cyber and Computer Forensics Program in Los Angeles. During her 28 years in law enforcement, Osborn safeguarded national security and coordinated counterintelligence efforts. She now inspires audiences as an international keynote speaker and host of Maverick Moves, a podcast championing resilient and bold leadership. Osborn's mission is clear: to equip others with the tools to lead through chaos, overcome adversity, and think like a maverick. Without further ado, Gina L. Osborn, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
Great, Ariana. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you. I guess we'll go ahead and just get started with my questions. So my very first question for you is, after you read the novel, The Spy Who Wore Red, written by Eileen Griffith, how did it inspire you to chase spies as a career?
You know, I think when I was in high school, my dream was to become an international woman of intrigue. I mean, that is just something that fascinated me. The CIA, the FBI, anything relating to that. And then I found this book, and she was an OSS agent during World War II. And I thought, gosh, that's what I would love to do, chase spies across Europe. And so I was in my second year of college. I had run out of money. I was a cocktail waitress at a comedy club. And a young man came up and started telling me about the Army's counterintelligence program. And I went down to the recruiter the next day and I signed up.
Awesome. I love what you just said, an international
woman of intrigue.
I love that.
As a teenager, that's what I wanted.
You had a dream and you chased it. I love that. And my next question for you is, can you describe the transition from investigating violent gangs in Orange County to leading one of the largest cyber forensics programs?
It was a huge jump because I didn't have any cyber experience. I am not really technically, I don't have a lot of aptitude when it came to it, but so I worked Asian organized crime in Little Saigon here in Orange County. I did that for 5 years. 9/11 happened, then I worked terrorism. And in order for us to be able to promote to the executive ranks in the FBI, we have to go back to Washington, D.C. So I was on the inspection staff. And the cyber program was brand new, but around 2004. And I volunteered, even though I didn't have those skills. I thought I wanted to learn. And I went to Chicago, did that inspection, and then I wound up inspecting all of the other cyber programs across the country. And that made me a subject matter expert based on the priorities and the resources. But again, I didn't have that technical skill. So when the FBI in Los Angeles created this Assistant Special Agent in Charge position, I put in for it and I got it.
Fantastic. That's incredible. And you created the FBI Cyber G-Girl Academy in 2014. So over 10 years after its founding, what do you hope girls can achieve?
Well, I wanted the girls to see people that looked like them and see people who didn't look like them. And it was funny because when I created that program, it was the first time in the Los Angeles FBI office that they had 4 female assistant special agents in charge. So they all participated in the program. I needed some girls to come and participate, so I went to my elementary school, Helen S. Stock in Tustin, and I went to the principal and I said, well, I've been in this principal office one other time before. We don't want to talk about that, but can you take your 5th graders and bring them over? And so they all got on a bus and came to our regional computer forensics lab. And when I asked the question, how many of you want to be FBI agents? Maybe one girl raised her hand. And then after we went through the entire program, all of the girls raised their hands. So really just getting those young people to start thinking about something that may or may not have been in their life at all. So they can, if they can dream it, they can do it.
Do you feel like that led to more girls being interested in pursuing the FBI agency or even just that realm of work in general? Like, do you think they now feel like they're able to actually pursue that dream now?
I hope they do, because I made sure that all of the classes that we had for those girls during that, I think it was like a 2 or 3 hour period, all female FBI agents. So they got to see women in action, teaching them about computer forensics and teaching them about how to stay safe online. So hopefully that'll plant a seed someday down the line for them to be interested and think about coming into the FBI.
Yeah, I definitely think it will. So what motivated you to recently launch your podcast, Maverick Moves, and embark as well on your recent TEDx talk?
Well, I had a very, very interesting year. I was the Chief Safety and Security Officer for LA Metro, which is the largest or the second largest transit system in the country. And I identified some performance deficiencies with the law enforcement contracts, and I went to the Inspector General to make a report, and then I was fired. So that really got me thinking about making a maverick move, because sometimes when we talk about mavericks, I always talk about, finding that hill that you're willing to die on, but sometimes that hill finds you, and it definitely found me. LA Metro meant a lot to me because I fell in love with the frontline employees, the bus operators, the custodians, the riders, and they all deserve to be safe coming to work and riding the system. So when I got fired, I thought, okay, what is this all about? What was the purpose behind all of this? And over the last year, speaking about it, going on the news and talking about it, really having that no fear, unapologetically fearless. That's what I talk about on the podcast. And it really kind of evolved. And I really wanted to take it to the TEDx stage, the global stage, to talk about Maverick Moves and how you can have breakthrough success.
Wow, that's awesome. Were you at all nervous for that TEDx talk? I know that's an obvious question.
So I never liked public speaking. I avoided it my entire 28 years in law enforcement. And then when I retired, I thought, you know what, this has been a fear my entire life. I'm going to conquer this fear. And I can tell you, doing that TEDx talk definitely got rid of all of my butterflies. I wasn't nervous. I had been sick 2 weeks before, so I had practiced as much as I possibly could, but I learned really how to connect with an audience. And I think that was the biggest lesson that I took with me as a keynote speaker, is that connection. I couldn't see the audience because the lights were so bright, but I could feel the audience. Right. And so that was a huge lesson for me, and that's going to make me a better speaker down the line.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've been doing your podcast for a while, what do you feel like that has taught you, since that's such a stark contrast from being an FBI agent and not necessarily doing as much talking as you said, and now you're hosting this podcast every single week and you're talking about all these things that you do?
Sure. So my degree is in psychology, and as a leader and an executive in the FBI, and as an executive with LA Metro, I use that degree every single solitary day. And one thing that they teach you in the FBI Academy is how to build rapport and how to interview people. And so really the skills that I learned in the FBI, I'm using on my podcast so I can really get the best. I mean, you know this, Ariana.
Yeah.
How do you get the best of your guests?
Right.
And last week I interviewed a woman by the name of Heather Brown, and she was sexually molested as a child, and she went on to work in the Orange County DA's office, and she prosecuted people who are abusing children. So when you talk about a maverick move, to have been traumatized as a child and then to go back and, right that wrong, it was really fascinating. So those are the types of stories that I like to tell, because when we think about mavericks, is it someone who's a whistleblower, or is it someone who just makes a move, and it could even be a small move that's going to change everything.
Wow, that's fantastic. It seems like you have so many inspiring people on your podcast. That's really incredible. So I know you mentioned you originally worked with Asian organized crime, and then after 9/11 happened, you went into terrorism. What was that like? Because it was such an uncertain time for the country. So I can only imagine how scary it must have been to be in the FBI during that time as well.
Yes, it changed the FBI completely. And everything is cyclical, and right now the FBI is going through tremendous change as well. But before 9/11, criminal investigations were king. And then after 9/11, counterterrorism. And there weren't enough counterterrorism agents who had already been working counterterrorism when 9/11 happened to do that. So all the criminal and other agents had to help with the leads that came out of the 9/11 attack. So it was definitely interesting because, when the FBI director says that you are no longer an investigator, you're an intelligence gatherer, that was definitely a culture shock for a lot of the seasoned FBI agents. So it was an interesting time for sure.
And you've covered so many cases throughout your career. What do you think was the most challenging case you've ever had to cover?
I would say my very first case when I got into the FBI, I was very, very fortunate to get assigned to the Santa Ana office. And so my first arrest was across the street from my high school because I'm from Orange
gosh.
County, so it worked out really well for me. It was Thai girls being brought into the United States and forced into prostitution, and I talk a little bit about that in my TED Talk. It was challenging because the Westminster Police Department and the FBI were at odds, and I did not know that. And so I went into the Westminster Police Department looking for a detective who I had found rescued a couple of girls. There was a newspaper article in my case file. And he gave me some information, and then he kind of shooed me out the back door. And I thought, okay. And then I ran the names. They were linked to international organized crime. And I'm like, this is my guy. We've got to work together. And the next time I went over there, they walked me into the chief's conference room, and the chief said, okay, you can work this one case, and that's it. But it was very challenging because you had these women from Thailand who were being brought over. They were charged $40,000 smuggling fees when they got here, and I can only imagine how much they're being charged now. And they had to work in brothels to pay off the smuggling fees. So really, it was a race against time to try and rescue these girls, and it was definitely a gut-wrenching experience to be able to be successful in those cases.
And going off that question, because you've covered so many just really difficult cases, how did you focus on your mental health during that time as well? How did you learn to separate your work from your personal life?
You know, it's hard because the FBI, it's not a job. It truly is a calling, especially when you're working those types of cases and you really want to make that difference. So back in those days, we didn't really think a whole lot about mental health. We just, went through it. But yeah, you have to take the time. You definitely have to take the time to recharge your batteries. But it was a 24/7, especially working Asian gangs. It was a 24/7 venture for about 5 years.
Wow, that's a lot of hard work. I give you major kudos. And one of my final questions for you is, what advice do you have for students who potentially see themselves working for the FBI in the future?
The FBI, the average age going through the FBI Academy is 31 years old. So you have to have, I think, 2 or 3 years of work experience, and usually it's a second career for people. So I have a lot of people coming to me asking me to mentor them to become FBI agents, and what I tell them is go do something that you're passionate about, because when it comes time for you to be interviewed by the FBI, if you're like going into cyber or learning a language or, looking for what the FBI is looking for, you're not going to be able to speak passionately about it, as opposed to if you followed your dream and you did, this exciting work. And your next position, you want to be the FBI, but you really want to pick something that is really exciting to you. So when it's time for you to interview with the FBI, you're going to be able to talk about the leadership opportunities you had, talk about the skills and the opportunities that you had. But one thing is really think about leadership. Think about how can I put myself in positions of leadership? So these are the things that I can talk about in the FBI and really be able to contribute. Because the younger agents who go through, they're probably going into the cyber program, but when you surround yourself with all these people who are on their second career, who are the cream of the crop, because a very small percentage of the people who apply for the FBI actually get in, you're going to have a better shot getting in there if you have a background that you're passionate about.
Wow, that's some really, really great advice. Thank you so much. And one of my last questions for you is, you never compromised your femininity to succeed during your 28 years in law enforcement. How do you coach others to lead authentically without fear of judgment?
That is very, very true. When I was in the Army, going through advanced individual training at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, I used to wear red lipstick with my battle dress uniform, which was a no-no. The first sergeant used to look for me every morning to see whether or not, and if he caught me, he would make me do push-ups. So that's just who I am. I'm a graduate of the Barbizon School of Modeling. That's what I did when I was 14 years old, and that's just who I am. And you can't change who you are if you're really going to be authentic. And you asked a little bit, I'll tell you about authentic leadership. When I got into the cyber position in Los Angeles, I showed up and I was a lead from the front leader. And that's what I learned in the Army, and that's how I did my entire FBI career. But then when I showed up in a place where knowing technology is currency, I would lead from the front and I would turn around and I didn't have anybody following me because I didn't have that credibility. So that was a moment for me. It's like, okay, if I can't lead that way, what do I have to contribute to this team? So I thought about it. I'm a good communicator. I'm really good at solving problems. I just came from FBI headquarters where I knew where all the money trees were. So if my team needed computers, if they needed equipment, whatever they need, I would get them. And really, that's when I started leading authentically, because my style of leadership, where I lead best, is being a servant leader and getting everybody what they need to do their jobs. So really listening to yourself, understanding what your superpowers are, and embracing those. And a lot of people think, okay, well, my superpower, okay, I'm good at communication, but everyone's good at communication. You know that everybody's not good at communication. So
Right.
I think we really need to value what our superpowers are. And like, I will never be a patient person as long as I live. I've tried, it'll never happen. But I'm spending my energy being a better communicator and a better problem solver, and leaving the things that I'm not good at to people who are good at that. And then I'll surround myself with those people.
So it seems like you emphasize a lot just knowing what your strengths and your weaknesses are, for sure.
Absolutely. And that's how you lead authentically. Because when you're leading in a style that isn't yours, your people know, everybody knows. So it's really important when you get that leadership position is to be who you are, whether you want to wear red lipstick with your battle dress uniform or however you want to do it, just be who you are, because that's where you're going to be happiest and that's where people are going to respect you the most.
Wow, I love that. That's incredible. And my very final question for you is, you've accomplished so many things throughout your career in general. What do you think, this may be a little hard, but what do you think is your most rewarding thing that you've learned from your entire journey?
I would say when I look back on my FBI career, I did 22 years in the FBI. When my legacy, it's not all the cases that I worked. It's not the buildings that I built or the teams that I built. It's all about the leaders that I developed. So my legacy comes when one of my leaders will call me up and tell me he's going to be an assistant legal attaché in London, or call me to tell me that he got my old job because he's going to do the things that I taught him how to do. And that's, that's a part of me that I left with the FBI. One of the things that I did when I became that authentic leader, I allowed my people to make mistakes. And if they wanted to, as long as they weren't running into a burning building, I would let them make those mistakes. But, I think we try and be perfect so much, and we put so much pressure on ourselves to do things right all the time. But it's those mistakes, that's where you learn the most. And so that's something that I think about as far as my legacy, is the people that are coming up behind me who are going to teach the people coming up behind them the same things that I taught them.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time. I loved your authentic answers. That was a really wonderful interview. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And that concludes today's episodes with Gina L. Osborn. Her story is a powerful reminder of what it means to serve with courage, intelligence, and grit in the face of adversity. Until next time, I'm Ariana Hartman, and this has been In Focus.